Essentially, it was like the role of a sales rep is to give the client what they want or what they need. He's sick of other people believing their own excuses. People run away from fear 2.5 times more than they run towards pleasure.
The quality of your results in sales depends on the quality of questions you ask.
And he will call you out to your face. Like, look, you're telling yourself the wrong story, and it's not going to get better until you fix it. And that's okay.
Sales shouldn't really be hard to me, okay? So, like...
You just hit the nail on the head. There are so many people that get attention, and they pay for attention, and then they're starting from zero with the client. See, that's cool, and I make jokes about that. I realize there's people that are college professors that, kind of want to give back and help teach what made them so successful. So, special guest today, Joey Szczepaniak, and I know how to say that. It might be hard to read it, but it's pretty easy to pronounce. Szczepaniak. And despite the way he looks, if you're watching this on video, he is not a police officer. So, great mustache. That upper lip, man, I got to tell you, it's one of the stronger mustaches I've seen.
I appreciate it, dude. I've never really grown it out this long. I'd grown it out a couple times earlier in life, but those other 2 times I had it for like a month, and it was like real small, thin, kind of creepy.
It's great. I'm sure I'm sure Candace loves it too, because you have no other women that are trying to flirt with you, so that's good.
Yep.
Wow. It's funny, dude. I'm happy you're here, man. I met Joey. Talk about making weird decisions. Joey was a sales rep for a company selling a mastermind product. And I knew it was a room that I wanted to get in based on people that I had seen pictures from that were posting pictures. And a friend of mine who I didn't even know that well was like, called my buddy Joey. So I talked to Joey. 7 minutes later, 10 minutes later, I'm upping my limit on a credit card and bought a multiple 5-figure mastermind. One might say that I'm a quick start. I think that's the proof of being a quick start. But once, I made the decision I wanted to be there, it's like, let's go make it happen. So I can thank Joey for getting me in the mastermind. And we've kind of created a friendship over the years. Joey's a hell of a mountain biker. You used to ride on the Pro Tour, right?
Not the Pro Tour. No, I mean, there's a couple tours on the East Coast that I was a part of, and it was a blast. I mean, it was like, it was a really good excuse to go learn other mountains and travel around and go camping and stuff. But yeah,
when I saw your photos, I'm like, there's no way that's you. Then we went riding, and I was like, okay, that's him.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's good to have you here, dude. So Joey has a company. Talk to us really quick about your company. Give us an insight as to what we're going to talk about today. So what do you guys do now with your business?
Yeah, so the company's called Southern Advisory. Funny enough, I was a 1099 employee when I was, when I basically met you. Like, I was a sales rep, 1099 contractor, right? And my role,
which is a great way to increase income. I talk about it all the time. Best way to increase your income: 1099 sales for somebody else. Sell somebody else's product or service.
100%, and avoid taxes legally. So, so that's cool. But outside of that, I mean, basically, it was there was no real tact when it came to naming the business, because I was in a role that was basically considered an advisor. That was the name of the role, and I had just moved to the South. And so when I was opening up an LLC, it's like, okay, I'll just call it Southern Advisory. And then after I had eventually left that position, which we could talk about, I started a company and I just kept the LLC.
Cool.
We're currently in the process of launching a new, like, basically kind of pivoting the brand a little bit, kind of it's essentially developing a subset from Southern Advisory, kind of like a spinoff, which is going to be called SalesTeamSystems.com, which is cool.
Love that name.
Yep. And basically, over the last couple of years, we've been managing sales teams for online brands, some names that a lot of people in the online space would know. And what we basically do is we remove the founder from anything related to the sales department outside of like weekly growth meetings. We take over everything when it comes to recruiting, training, managing, running sales meetings, doing one-on-ones. We essentially come in as the management team that handles the sales department. And a lot of times, when we come in, sales team's underperforming, we usually will fix it through one of a couple different ways. I mean, a lot of times, recruiting has been a really big leverage point for a lot of the teams that we've been a part of, but also on the system side, like we believe a lot in strong leadership, and we fixed the sales process 9 times out of 10, whether it's like how we're pitching the offer or just the way that the CRM is set up. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it, but long story short, we've been scaling sales teams for businesses over the last couple of years. And it's a pretty labor intensive service, but it's also, we also get paid really well. So, yeah.
Well, scaling a sales team is the end goal, but really what you're fixing is the system and processes, which most sales reps don't have. Most sales reps are really good at talking and gregarious, outgoing, easy to communicate, but they don't have a system. They don't follow a process.
Yeah, the sales process is one part. Teaching sales reps how to think about sales is another part. Like I don't usually have sales reps like stick to a rigid script. I usually just teach them the conversation structure and then teach them how to think and like about sales and how to navigate the conversation. But
I think that's really interesting. Before we dive into your business, I want to talk about the journey that you had, because I think you just mentioned something else we could dive deep into, how to think. Because a script not only is noticeable from the consumer's perspective, it's not attractive. Unless you're doing low ticket used car sales, following a script.
And everything that we do is consultative. So it's a consultative style of selling. And so like you can't be consultative if you're following a script. Like you gotta have leadership. You gotta be able to dig deep into the things that the prospect is saying. There's no way to really make a consultative sale at the conversion rate that you want to without knowing how to think about it and navigate the conversation with like some flexibility. So
yeah, cool, love it. All right, so when you went to college, right? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, UMass Amherst. Grew up in Western Mass. Ended up going to UMass. Phenomenal time, believe it or not. They had this program that was it was called Bachelor's Degree with Individual Concentration, and basically it was I built my major around sales and entrepreneurship. Like literally, it's on my degree, sales and entrepreneurship.
Cool.
So it was like
Dude, that's cool.
Basically, you had to like make a case to the department around why the classes that you've chosen made sense with the name of the degree that you were going for. And so it's like a handful of psychology classes and business classes and economics. And then I tossed in some like, nutrition and biology stuff just because I thought it was fun, but that was just.
Well, that's cool. What better way to learn sales than a W-2 college professor making $80,000 a year?
I know. I will
That's
say
the irony of
some of the psychology, like some of the psychology classes were definitely good.
Yeah, I bet.
There was a couple business classes. Like there was one business class that was like the professor actually the entire semester taught the class around the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. So That was an awesome class. And he was a local entrepreneur who had started like a burrito shop, like bootstrapped, and now he had 7 locations. And so he was a beast. That was an awesome class.
Yeah, see, that's cool. And I make jokes about that. I realize there's people that are college professors that, kind of want to give back and help teach what made them so successful. So I make a joke about it. But so, all right. So you graduate with a degree in sales and entrepreneurship. What do you do right out of college?
Well, in college, here's my perspective on college, just real quick as a side note. Like, I don't think that college by itself is the competitive advantage that you can give yourself going into the marketplace. But I think what you do during college and how you navigate those years can be the leverage point. So like for me, I was super busy outside of class. Like it was, so I did join a fraternity and that was fun. And we did a lot of philanthropy events. We obviously partied, that was just kind of part of it, but that wasn't only what I did. I basically like in 2016, I did this internship called Student Painters, also known as Young Entrepreneurs Across America. Basically, what they did was they came and spoke in front of our class for like 3 minutes before class started, and they passed around a clipboard. I put my name on the clipboard, and I got a call from them. I interviewed, and then I just started with them. And so basically it was like they gave you marketing materials and insurance and a partnership with Sherwin-Williams. And then they trained you on essentially on the weekends during the semester, going home, knocking on doors, giving free estimates for exterior paint jobs, taking deposits, stacking the summer with work. And then a couple weeks before the summer started, they basically put you through a training program on how to paint a house. And then you had to go find painters, teach them how to paint a house. And, basically spend the summer painting houses and maybe landing a couple more jobs to stack the rest of the year. And it was a blast. And so basically I did get the opportunity, or I was offered the opportunity to come back as an executive, which is not it's not like a corporate executive, but like an executive is basically the manager of the new managers, right? The new people that are actually running a business in their own little area. And I didn't take that for whatever reason. In hindsight, it probably would have given me a little bit more leadership experience, which would have definitely like I probably in hindsight would have come back to manage the managers. But I still wouldn't have traded my next experience. And so that was my junior year. And so senior year, I basically went into this company called Alcu, which was basically a recruiting and staffing company out of Andover, Massachusetts. When I worked for them, I was working in a remote office in Amherst, and they were out in Andover doing probably it was definitely over 100 million in annual revenue. They basically were always fighting with HubSpot over the top spot in best places to work out in Boston. And what that company was, they basically gave me a list of a bunch of old leads, and I would call those leads, and they put me in an office with an office phone. So I had a corded phone up to my ear.
Ew.
And I was dialing with my fingertips. I wasn't none of this power dialer, nothing. And I was making $300 to $400 dials a day, calling VPs, executives, hiring managers, and basically just getting what was called an SUP, which was skill set usage process. And basically it was what skill set do you hire for? How often do you hire for it? And what's your hiring process? And so I was basically compensated for what was ultimately updating the CRM, basically. And so I was calling around, updating the CRM, and then calling the Andover office when I had hot leads, and told certain account managers to follow up with it. And I did that for about 8 to 10 months, I think, which equated to probably 100,000 dials, which was crazy. And it was a great experience. Especially it was very B2B. We were calling Fortune 500 companies. Cool. Maybe Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, I don't know. But big companies like Johnson & Johnson, Raytheon, just big companies. So, they offered me a job with a $50K base, and I had a great relationship with the with one of the partners, and his name was Dave Bruner. That dude is a freaking boss. I learned so much from that guy, and I hated turning him down. I hated it, but just for something about the job, I just wasn't super fired up about. I also interviewed for this company called, I don't know, some elevator company. It was a big company, and they both
Otis?
jobs. What's that?
Otis?
No, it wasn't Otis. It was one of their competitors. But basically, both jobs between Alcu and this elevator company were I could be making $250,000 within a year or two, and I turned it down coming out of college. My roommates were like, "What the hell are you doing, dude? Are you stupid?" Basically, and I was I don't know. And it's almost like I spoke it into existence. It was wild because I had Bentley, my dog, at the time, still do, and he was he's my boy. We mountain bike, he's very active, and there's no way I was going to leave him at home for 10 hours a day or whatever. And so I almost like spoke it into existence. I was like, you know what, guys? Yeah, I might be crazy, but like, it would just be really nice if I could find like a remote sales job. And, dude, within 3 days of me saying that, my buddy Pedro calls me and was like, hey, dude, I've got this remote sales job that you should apply for. And it was with this company called, at the time it was called Self Publishing School. Now it's selfpublishing.com. And basically phenomenal company. Like the CEO, Chandler Bolt, he basically, I mean, he did student painters. So that's how we kind of like made the connection there, which was cool.
Yeah.
Phenomenal entrepreneur. He's got an awesome YouTube channel. I don't know if he updates it anymore, but like some of his old videos on systems and leadership and like how he runs his business are phenomenal. If anybody wants to go check that out. Like I make a lot of my decisions and build a lot of my systems based off some of those videos. I went for the closer role right out of the gate because I was cocky. I was like, I just turned down 2 big jobs. Right. And it's like, and I didn't make it through the interview process. And he was, well, I did, but he was like, yeah, I can't offer you a closer role. Like pie. Right. And so he offered me an SDR role, which was, it was outbound. So I was back to ripping dials, which I was very familiar with.
What does that acronym stand for?
SDR, sales development rep. So basically you're calling leads that are in the CRM that are opting into, at the time it was like people that were buying his book, people that were registering and attending a webinar, people that were downloading some resource on the website. Like I would basically call them, get them to start talking to me about their book. And then I would set them for a meeting with one of the closers to join the like $3,000 to $5,000 at the time program that to basically learn how to write, market and self-publish their own book. So basically like that's the program that we were selling. Program got great results. They did awesome. I stayed there for maybe just under 2 years. We also did a lot of traveling. So like I was like on the road every couple weeks. It felt like going to events with Chandler. He would speak on stage. I would set up a big booth in the back. And so at the end of his talk, he would basically like say like, if you want to talk with our team, go book an appointment. And so I would basically book all the appointments and set appointments for the reps there. I would take some appointments myself and close some deals. We definitely wasn't the best at that at first, but definitely got better. And also during that time, like I loved the company, and I also just took ownership of a lot of things inside of that business. So like creating a lot of playbooks, ultimately helped build out the SDR team to be much bigger because it was just me and Pedro and this other guy, Ben, at the time. And, you know, eventually got into some closing, got to close some deals towards the end there. And what ultimately happened was I met Cole Gordon, and he had just quit Traffic and Funnels. And I basically got into contact with him, and he told me what he was doing. And I basically got Chandler to hire Cole to train the sales team and just help with that.
How did you meet Cole?
Again, Pedro Matos, man, the connector of all connectors. Like this dude, he was the one that added me to what was the Smartest Guys in Marketing Facebook group, like friggin' 5 years ago or whatever, 6 years ago, when that was Taylor and Chris's group, before it was the Traffic and Funnels group. And like there's so many, like, dude, I could attribute so many just random little connections to Pedro. The dude is like a super connector.
That's awesome.
And he's also
how'd you meet Pedro?
Student painters. So he did student painters. Yep. 100%.
That's too funny, man.
Dude's an immigrant, like came to the United States when he was like 8, I believe, from Brazil. And just like the hardest worker. Like you'd meet him and you would have no idea how brilliant the guy is. Like total genius. Like built a business development department, like managing partnerships and everything for self-publishing. And I mean, I'm pretty sure if that department alone does like 5 to 10 million in revenue, like he's a beast. So long story short, which is turning into a longer story, but I mean, hopefully it's entertaining. essentially, I started working with Cole one-on-one, and like we built a good relationship. And I was like, okay, I want to go through whatever this guy went through because he's a beast, and I did it. So I reached out to Taylor Welch. Long story short, got a job. Moved my life halfway across the country to go live in Tennessee, and work out of the TF office, and went from making I think I made 75 grand my last year at selfpublishing.com or what was self-publishing school. And then dude made like 275 grand the following 12 months. It was like turned my life, it was on its head, dude. And it was like, I just went all in. And I mean, dude, it was incredible. It was so fun. The in-person.
So when you started at Traffic and Funnels, did they hire you as a closer?
Oh yeah. Yep. They hired me as a closer. And, yeah.
Could you have stayed at the publishing place and then say, hey, I want to get out of this SDR role. I want to be a closer. Could you have stayed there, you think?
Believe it or not, I had actually already started doing that. Okay. I had already started taking calls and closing deals, but it just something, it was like, I wasn't like admittedly crazy passionate about helping people write and publish books. Like if it was the same company with the same team and the same leader in a different industry, like I probably would have stayed. Yeah. I think that was the main driving factor. And there was also probably some shiny object syndrome in there with like Taylor and his company. Like it was very flashy, to be completely honest. Like I was like,
back then, I mean, they were crushing it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then we only got better. Like there was like 5 or 6 of us on that team. That was like the core team, and like, dude, we were unstoppable. We were closing deals, and that was like 4 to 6 closers, let alone the outbound team there. Like the outbound team there was freaking really good. It was, yeah, we were dialed in. It was fun. It was very fun.
Wow.
So
you go to Traffic and Funnels. How long were you there?
Actually, just over 2 years. Just over.
So you crushed it with income in Traffic and Funnels.
What's that?
You crushed it with income when you moved.
Yeah, crushed it with income. I don't know how much revenue I put up. It was definitely more than 5 million, less than 10 million. In like probably 15 months on the phones, maybe 18. I don't really remember. Yeah, something like that. But it was a wild time, especially towards the end, because like the company started going through a lot of change really fast, like whiplash. We had a freaking phenomenal year, and then like everything started to just get too chaotic, and we started to go backwards. And I was very vocal about it, and ended up building a really good relationship with Taylor and Chris. And they basically were just like, okay, cool. Like, let's give this guy a little bit more responsibility, which turned into a lot more responsibility. And ultimately took over the sales team for both Traffic and Funnels and Sales Mentor, which was a friggin' wild ride, dude, especially picking it up where it was. Like we had gone backwards pretty significantly, like before I had right before I basically took over. And, so it's a lot of like, picking up the pieces, resetting the culture, and building some systems to like capture the low-hanging fruit. I remember one of the big moves we made, which was actually it was a blast. It was like, we had hired, I basically hired this guy, Jacob Morales, phenomenal SDR guy. He had just gotten done building an outbound team for Gym Launch, and he came in as the SDR manager, and basically like he whipped that SDR team in shape so quickly. And then him and I like looked into HubSpot, and I had been pretty savvy with HubSpot for a while, so I like rebuilt all of our call lists and everything, and we found all of this untapped potential, like opportunity. And we basically told him to turn off like 6, if not multiple 6 figures in ads like overnight, because we had been super down in revenue and like all the stuff. And so it's like, we got to save money and we got to make more. So we ended up like significantly increasing revenue on like 0 ad spend, just from calling the leads that were in the database, which was really fun.
Yeah.
So stayed in that role.
When you say hundreds, 6 figures of ads, is that monthly, daily?
Monthly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, multiple 6 figures a day would be crazy. I mean, there's definitely people spending that, but
you hear stories, dude. Some people, they do it all the time. But yeah, because back in the day, I remember seeing ads all the time, and I wasn't even in marketing, but I'd see ads of Chris and Taylor all the time. So fast forward. So it changed. The culture changes, business changes, and you have an opportunity. Then what?
So we basically ride that out for 6 months. A lot went really well. It ultimately, like, we increased revenue pretty significantly based on like where it was when I came in. Long story short, just there was some things that it was just like lack of alignment. There was some things that were broken that I just at that point believed weren't going to get fixed, which ultimately didn't get fixed. I mean, the company doesn't exist anymore. So I left. I wrote it out as long as I possibly could, in my opinion, as long as I thought was like reasonable. Made a lot of sacrifices along the way. Like, definitely went backwards in income to get the experience of like running the team. Like, went from 275K to like probably 100 to 120 just to take over everything. Man.
That's a swing.
But it was fun. Like, I valued learning over earning, basically, which was so important to me. Still is at this point, honestly. Yeah. And when I left, I started a business kind of by accident. I mean, I needed money, and so I got a client, and then got another client, and got another client, and sooner rather than later, like, got to work with Dan Martell and Ryan Dice and Roland Frazier, and I mean, we're working with like Grant Cardone and Pete Vargas right now on 10X stages. Like, dude, we built a 7-figure agency, a sales management agency, off of no website, no marketing, just referrals, which is cool. And it's also not, because now, like, I just hired a marketing director, which is like, I'm starting to like really take marketing seriously, because I know that in order for us to hit our goals over the next 3 years, like, obviously super important role. And we probably should have a website, and we probably should be running paid traffic and doing all that stuff. So
probably maybe a splash page or something.
Yeah. So we're just in that transition where right now we basically, like, we've got a lot of clients, and they're all winning. Like, we just got done. We came in, took over a sales team like 4 months ago. And the plan was to basically take it over for 3 or 4 months, and then transition to full-time sales manager. And I mean, they were doing like $600,000 a month. Now it's 3 months, 4 months later, and they've had 2 back-to-back $1.2 million months. And
how do you scale it fast, dude? Like, are they selling digital products?
Well, this company was selling like coaching and consulting for like general contractors, businesses, builders, construction people. And I mean, it's when we scale something that fast, it's like, frankly, it's and when we're able to keep it there, it's because the business owners have, like, they deserve that. And the reason I say they deserve that is because these guys have been around for like a long time, like a very long time. And like longer than internet marketing was cool. And so, like, they've been putting like years and years and years on refining strategies, and like some of the biggest leverage points we hit with them were like, dude, a different set of standards on the sales team. Like, we basically turned almost the entire sales team over, because there were just like people that were like not necessarily they just weren't up to the standard, and at least the new standard that we were bringing in. And so we brought a level of leadership that we believe is necessary for a team to thrive and produce at the level that the business owner wants it to produce at. And we recruited people, and we created a couple new roles inside of the sales organization, which was cool. And we just did more of what was working at the end of the day. Like,
so they had the coaches on staff to coach. I mean, you scale that much in a month or two. The fulfillment always blows my mind when you compare it to other types of industries, right? If you're selling a physical widget that is manufactured in China, it's hard to scale that fast without running into logistic problems.
Yeah. And luckily enough, they had just gone through like a restructure of their fulfillment organization. So like they were like more than ready for it on the back end. Like sales was
Cool.
the bottleneck. Marketing was also the bottleneck. So they did also like fix a little bit of their market. Like their marketing definitely got better. But yeah, they were ready for it.
Can you give me a good definition of what's the difference of sales versus marketing?
Well, it comes down to like the stages of awareness, right? So like marketing is I forget what the actual names of the stages are, but essentially like you're generating like awareness in marketing, and then you're converting that attention in sales. So there's like so like a lot of times, if I was just to paint this as a picture, like part of like marketing actually does a lot of heavy lifting in the right situation. Sales shouldn't really be hard to make. Okay. So like
You just hit the nail on the head. There are so many people that get attention and they pay for attention, and then they're starting from zero with the client.
Well, so
the education.
Here's the problem, right? The problem is that people think that they just need attention. They just need to give sales the attention. Now, here's the other part. Like, I'm also never going to be like, I'll give feedback to marketing, but I'm not going to, I don't like to make excuses for not making sales. So like, I'll build a more robust and complex sales process on the back of like marketing that really only generates problem aware customers. So there's difference between like problem aware prospects and solution aware prospects. And so like a lot of times what ends up happening is like people are getting into the pipeline as like problem aware, and that's when consultative selling like really has to take over and educate the prospect on like the solution. And so like when they get into a sales call, like you got to educate them on like, first you got to highlight the problem, and you got to really dig into that and make sure that they're problem aware. But then also you got to move into like, okay, cool, here's the solution and all that stuff. But in today's world, like most people aren't going to get on a sales call. Not, and I don't want to say most people, but like a lot of people aren't going to get onto a sales call if they don't know relatively what the solution is. And that's, at least in my opinion, what I've been able to see across a lot of, big brands.
One of the worst questions to start off a call if someone says, "What is this?" It's like, dude, you're starting from scratch if that's the question. This is way too soon to be talking.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, if you can, the companies that I've seen be the most successful are twofold. So either one, they've got a robust sales process that does a really good job of not only highlighting the pain, but like really highlighting what the solution is. That's one side of it. The other side of it is like marketing has done such a good job educating the prospects on like what the solution is and could be for them, that people get into that call basically being like, okay, cool. Like I already know you. I already know the founder. I already know part of like what you guys do. Like catch me up to speed on a few things, but like I'm pretty much in. So,
how can somebody, so people run away from fear 2.5 times more than they run towards pleasure in a sales process. People are eager to take action 2.5 times more than taking action towards something that they want. So when they start to understand the problem is there, this is the part that interests me with internet marketing, because you can automate education in the consumer's journey without taking too much time from the professional, if it's not one-on-one coaching, which then becomes expensive, right? One-on-one coaching can be expensive. How do you then educate the consumer on becoming more aware of a solution without spending too much, time from either a coach or SDR or sales rep? How do you educate the consumer on solutions once they're aware?
Well, it depends on if marketing's doing it or sales is doing it. Both, it really doesn't take a long time. So like it's more about like, so there's like the whole sales process should be leading up to educating someone on a solution, right? One way or the other. Like even if they come into the call solution aware, you still got to uncover the problems and see if it's a good fit so that you can maintain a frame of leadership and like actually make sure that you're solving the right problem.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how can you do it? I mean, tactically, like by following a conversation structure on a sales call that basically like starts by understanding the problem, then starts to basically like educate them on a solution. Virtually every call that we like, the way that we teach sales is by like, we train on discovery so much because it's the biggest leverage point in the sales process is like executing on a really good discovery. So,
give me an example of that.
Like understand, like basically being able to like talk about, cool, what's the biggest problem that you got on the call to solve today? How long has it been a problem? What have you done to try to solve it? Why hasn't that worked? What's in it for you if you solve it, which is now talking about some of their goals, right? And then how important is that goal to you? Like, is it important enough to you to where if I walked you through a game plan on a solution to fix the biggest problem that we just talked about, like, do you want to take action on it right now? Like, how much of a priority is it? And a lot of discovery, I mean, it's very situational because your ability to actually ask questions that are relevant to what the prospect is saying. It's like just being able to know how to listen, you know?
Exactly. That's where a script gets bowled over on a higher ticket item because it has to be a customized answer. So I like what you said, train on discovery. I call that genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
You know, as long as I can stay in the genuinely curious role without in the back of my mind saying, I'm going to get a sale at the end of this call, you allow yourself to have a real conversation with the prospect.
Yep.
Because you gave a really good talk one time. This was a couple of years ago. I saw you speak and you said, the question was, I think you asked the question, but it's what's the role of sales? What's the purpose? What's the role for the sales rep? And I didn't, in my head, I'm going, I'm not going to raise my hand. So how did you bring us up to speed?
Well, I'm pretty sure I said.
Do you remember that conversation?
Kind of. I was on a whiteboard in the back room at the app, right?
Yeah, you see, it's like one of those moments you black out and you say some great stuff and then you forget about it. But it was like I'll probably butcher it too, but essentially it was like the role of a sales rep is to give the client what they want or what they need.
Yeah. It's
right?
Well, there was this thing, the 3 rules of sales that I learned from Taylor Welch was rule number 1, your job is to do what's best for the other person. Rule number 2, what's best for the other person is oftentimes outside their comfort zone. And then rule number 3, they're going to fight like hell to stay within their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So
I thought that was wonderful.
When people ask me what sales is, I usually just tell them that it's questions. So sales is questions. Like the quality of your questions depends. The quality of your results in sales depends on the quality of questions that you ask. Period.
Yeah. Are you a Jeremy Minor fan?
I think he's got a lot of good stuff. I think that some of the ways that he does things, like I don't necessarily like totally agree with, like a lot of it, like some of the tonality and scripting sounds a little bit weird in my opinion, but like he's got a lot of really good like one-liners.
I agree with you because he is so good at tone and cadence, right? His demeanor completely changes and he's empathetic and he'll talk slowly. And I think he overdoes it because we have to consciously overdo it when we're talking to somebody. And if we consciously do it, we might not even be half as dramatic as he comes off as,
Yeah. I always tell people, like when I'm training them on sales, like I get really aggressive. Cause my philosophy in sales is that of leadership. Like I'm there to call people out on their bullshit. I'm there to like really make sure that they're acting in alignment with where they want to be. And when I'm doing call reviews and when I'm training people on sales, like I always tell them, like, I might be way over here on the aggression, on like the level of aggression, and you're probably way over here. So I'm almost overcompensating for your lack of aggression so that like maybe you meet me somewhere in the middle and we find some harmony.
But I also think, to give you a little bit of credit here, aggressive is not aggressive like pull out your wallet, give me your credit card number. It's aggressively curious. Like, do you really care about what you're telling me right now? And I'm going to give you an example. When we went to lunch the other day, my buddy came and he's trying to pick your brain about, what would you do with my shoes? And after a couple of questions, you were like, I think you just need to learn marketing. That was like a slap in the face. Bro, he still talks about that to this day. He goes, I felt like I was sitting there naked.
Oh, no. Oh man. Yeah,
but it's what he needed to hear. He needed to hear that because he tells himself a story and then he talks. When he says it, people will go, yeah, that makes sense. And he keeps getting the confirmation of a bad thought. And you were like, no, I wouldn't do that at all. I think you need to learn marketing. And it completely stopped his excuses that he was telling himself.
Yeah.
Which is what he needed. And I think that's the power of sales.
So the aggression in sales comes down to how much you actually care about the other person. So like you can be aggressive. Like a lot of people view, like when you think about sales, like a lot of people think like slimy, sleazy, car salesman,
Totally.
like all this random, like gross.
Oh, dude. I mean, we could name some names right now. Commission breath. We can name some names right now that are going viral online. And my shirt's a little too baggy, I think, to be in their group. But you know who I'm talking about. I can't even stand listening to that stuff.
Yeah, and so like that's what turns a lot of people off with sales. But like when I recently just trained like this like younger woman who she's a doctor and she's getting into the sales role to sell something that's like related to what she like studied in school and like all this stuff. And it's like the $7,500 program. And like I had this conversation with her about aggression in sales. And I told her, I was like, how do you, when I tell you aggression in sales, like, what do you think? She's like slimy, sleazy, commission breath, all this stuff. It's like, if you, I reframed that for her. And I basically was like, listen, if you can use leadership and caring about people as your aggression and challenging them to take action in alignment with their goals, in alignment with what they say, and hold them accountable to like the things that they say that they want, that level of aggression where you actually care about somebody and you're like fighting for them because like you want to see them win, like that's a completely different level of energy than like I want to close you because I need to hit my numbers and make a check.
Totally. It's almost aggression with yourself. Like, am I going to let this slide? You have to battle internally if I'm going to let that slide. Because at the end of the day, my buddy Dan Sullivan, who not the Dan Sullivan, the author, but he's a coach for like health professionals. He gets so riled up, and he gets riled up because he's sick of other people believing their own excuses, and he will call you out to your face. Like, look, you're telling yourself the wrong story, and it's not going to get better until you fix it. And that's okay, because it's not on me. Like, and that's where I call liberty. There's liberty in having a true sales conversation, because it's not about sales. It's helping somebody get from point A to point B. And if they're not willing to move, it's not my fault. My job is just to help them bridge the gap. And this is what bothers me so much, is when people are unwilling to get out of their own way, you just can't help those people. And that's okay. Not everybody is going to be, making a move.
Yeah. I think one thing that I use to like the analogy that I use to tell people, to help people remind, because it is tough to like, because you get to that point on a call or when you're in a conversation where you're like, like, do I call out this person right now and like challenge them, or do I not? And that's really where like the big decision is made in the sales rep's mind, is like, do I want to go there and cause friction? And like really the conversation that they're having is like, am I afraid to piss this person off? If I do, I'll lose the deal. Now I'm in a scarcity mindset. Like maybe I'll just schedule a follow-up with them and like let them think about it. But like number one, they're gonna probably ghost you either way, if that's really what's meant to happen in that sales process. So you can either be super passive and just let them go make a decision on their own, and if that's the case, then you're probably going to lose the deal because they're not going to show up to the next call, or you call them out on their BS, and you at least give yourself the chance to like lead them to success, or it just pisses them off and they ghost you then. I would rather have the latter than the former. And in order to like understand when you're at that point in a call where you're like, do I call this person out? You got to understand the order of consequences. Because like the road is diverging here. We're going to pick one path. Do we be aggressive and do we call them out and do we hold them to a high standard, or do we not? And we just let them kind of go and make the decision on their own and make all these excuses for why we didn't challenge them. There's an order of consequences with both directions. In the direction of the challenger frame, and like really being aggressive and showing people like, hey, you got to step up. It's time to like do this. The order of consequences is like, cool, I challenge this person. First order of consequence is like, it's uncomfortable. It kind of sucks. It creates a little bit of friction. Second order of consequence, they get what they need. Third order of consequence, 3 months later, I get thanked for it. They have a bigger business. Their family's starting to thrive more. They're able to be there for their kids. Their kids grow up better. Like they have a ripple effect of whatever they created inside of their own world. And this is for fitness, right? It's like fitness is like, cool. They got healthier. They're more present. They're with their kids. Business, they got a bigger business. They're more present. So it's like there's consequences that way that are like hard in the short term, but good in the long term. The orders of consequence the other way, if you're not going to be aggressive, it's easy in the short term. And this is basically choosing your heart, right? It's like going to the gym. It's like it's hard in the short term because it sucks because you got to wake up early and all that shit. But in the long term, it pays off. Same thing in sales. If you're not aggressive, it's easy because you get to let yourself off the hook and you don't have friction on a sales call. But the next order of consequence is that person doesn't get what they need. Their family continues to see a subpar version of themselves. Their business continues to suffer. Their employees start to turn over, and their families start to make less money. It's like all this, like you can keep going. Like it's this ripple effect, negatively one way or positively the other way. And like if you can remember that, it like almost gives you yourself permission to be like, hey, listen, I'm going to challenge you right now, but I promise it's the only reason is because like I want what's best for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to be doing you a disservice by not like challenging you.
And it only works if you believe in the solution that you're offering.
1,000%. Yeah.
Because if you're just doing it to make money as a sales rep, you don't need any of this kind of training. Go to the other guy that we already mentioned with the tight shirts. But if you believe in your solution, then this is absolutely the right way to attach it. What's the name of your company again? Southern Advisory?
Southern Advisory. Yep. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Joey Szczepaniak. I'll be launching salesteamsystems.com soon. Or if you want to just email me, it's joey@southernadvisory.co. Hit me up.
Love it. And really quick, what does your ideal client look like? Because you talk a lot of, you use acronyms, but it's mainly like online sales. What's your ideal client look like?
You know what's funny about that? As a quick side note, we just built a sales team around selling pergolas and pavilions and gazebos online. Like $20,000 to $25,000 average order value. Someone clicks a link to fill out a free quote request form, and like they're selling. I think the last, when we parted ways with them, their last month was like $900,000 to $1 million in pergola and gazebo sales in 30 days just off of free quote request forms. We built a whole sales team around it. It was actually super fun. But basically, like anybody selling a high ticket service online that requires a sales team, maybe you've got a lot of untapped leads that you're not calling. Maybe you've lost trust in your salespeople, and you just have this like need to micromanage them because you have just some like inhibited like unconscious thought that like they're not doing what they need to do. Maybe they're closing at a low rate, and maybe you're just not hitting your revenue goals, and it's kind of a roller coaster, and you're not growing at all. Pretty much people who like, we have a couple ideal clients. First ideal client is basically like someone that's doing like maybe a couple $1 million and they really want to grow. Like that's our bread and butter, like done for you agency where we come in and we take over everything. We work with people that are smaller than that, but it's really more on a consulting basis, where we help fix their sales process, get them ready to like build a sales team and like get them ready for a service like ours. Because if we come into a business that's too small, it's just a little bit of more of a whiplash. Yeah.
I have a client, remind me to introduce you to the client. They have a roofing company and they do a lot of business, but there's room to improve on the sales process. So remind me to introduce you to that.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Thanks.
For sure. All right, Mustache. Joey Szczepaniak, the one and only. Appreciate you being here today, my friend. We'll have this live, and if anybody's interested, I'll have links in the description below. But thanks for hanging out.
Appreciate you, bro.
All right. See you, buddy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Check us out on podcasts for Spotify and Apple, and you can always watch the video recap on YouTube. We'll see you there.